Iggy Pop, the Godfather of Punk. You know him as a human lightning storm of raw power and confrontational energy. For over 5 decades, he's been the untamed, bare-chested ID of rock and roll, an artist who literally bleeds for his art. With the Stooges, he didn't just break the rules, he shredded the rulebook, creating a sound so primal and gloriously simple it became the blueprint for punk and countless other genres. Iggy has never had time for anything fake, safe, or less than 100% real. So to earn his respect, a band had to be fearless. They had to have soul. So, what does the Godfather of Punk actually listen to? Who are the artists that he, in his own words, has championed? You might think it's just a list of proto-punk noisemakers and Detroit rockers. And you'd be partly right. But the full picture is way more eclectic and interesting than you'd imagine. What if I told you that one of his all-time favorite bands, a group he gushes about with total passion, is a collective of Tuareg musicians from the Sahara Desert? That's the unpredictable genius of Iggy Pop. His taste is as wild as his stage presence. Today we're rating the record collection of a true icon, using Iggy's own words from his fantastic BBC Six Music radio show and candid interviews to find the 6 bands he has publicly loved the most. From post-punk legends forged in industrial England to surprising champions of world music, this is a look into the mind of one of rock's greatest rebels. And the number 1 spot? It's an artist whose influence was so profound Iggy was completely and totally obsessed. Kicking off our list at number 6 is a band that perfectly captures Iggy's love for the extreme, the unconventional, and the unapologetically loud. The Japanese experimental rock titans Boris. If you don't know them, trying to define their sound is like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. Since starting back in 1992, Boris has explored everything from crushing doom metal and psychedelic rock to ambient drone and even J-pop. They're musical shapeshifters of the highest order, held together by one principle. They are always, unequivocally, heavy. It's no shock they named themselves after a Melvin song, another band known for its heavy genre-bending sound. So what is it about this experimental powerhouse from Tokyo that caught Iggy's ear? It's their fearless rejection of musical norms. It's their relentless chase for pure imaginative expression. Iggy has always been drawn to artists who carve their own path and refuse to be boxed in. In a world of cookie-cutter rock, Boris is a glorious anomaly. This is a band that can release an album that's just a single hour-long track of meditative drone, then follow it up with something that flirts with pop, all without losing their core identity. On his BBC Six Music radio show, Iggy has praised bands that defy convention, and Boris is the epitome of that philosophy. He championed their ability to create entire worlds of sound, from beautiful shimmering textures to punishing walls of noise. This isn't music made for radio or mass appeal. This is art for art's sake. It's challenging, it's immersive, and it demands your attention. You don't just listen to a Boris album, you experience it. The connection to Iggy's own work is clear. Think about the experimental undercurrents of the Stooges. We celebrate their raw 3-chord anthems, but something more complex was always brewing. An album like Funhouse isn't just a collection of songs, it's a descent into chaos, a soundscape of feedback, sax squalls and primal screams. In his early days, Iggy was inspired by avant-garde composers, always interested in pushing the boundaries of rock music. In Boris, Iggy sees kindred spirits. He sees a band that, like the Stooges, isn't afraid to be difficult, to be abrasive, and to prioritize raw feeling over commercial appeal. They're proof that music can be both incredibly powerful and deeply strange. By championing a band like Boris, Iggy reminds us that his punk ethos isn't just a sound. It's an attitude. It's about freedom, experimentation, and the courage to make the music you want to make, no matter how weird it is. At number 5, we have a band that proves Iggy's finger is still right on the pulse of modern music. This isn't a throwback. This is a contemporary act he passionately endorsed. We're talking about the ferocious London-based post-punk band, Savages. Active from 2011 to 2017, Savages hit the scene like a Molotov cocktail. Their sound was a taut, explosive and brilliant mix of jagged guitars, a pummeling rhythm section, and the commanding presence of frontwoman Jenny Beth. Iggy Pop was an early and vocal champion for Savages, playing their music constantly on his BBC show and praising them in interviews. He loved their intensity, their intelligence, and the sheer raw power of their live shows. This wasn't a band that just played songs. They created an atmosphere of palpable tension and cathartic release. They were a perfect storm of art and aggression, a combination that has always been at the core of Iggy's own musical DNA. In fact, his admiration went beyond just playing their records. He shared a bill with them at London's prestigious Royal Festival Hall, a clear sign of his respect. He saw in them a continuation of a lineage he helped create. The connection to post-punk is obvious. Savages drew from the dark angular sounds of bands like Joy Division and Susie and the Banshees, bands that were, in turn, deeply influenced by the raw energy of Iggy and the Stooges. It's a perfect full-circle moment in rock history. So, what did he love about them specifically? He praised their raw and concerned lyrics. Savage's lyrics weren't typical rock and roll. They were poetic, confrontational, and deeply philosophical, tackling love, power, and identity with a searing honesty. Their debut album, Silence Yourself, was a manifesto, a call to arms against the noise of modern life. This intellectual depth, combined with their visceral attack, is what set them apart. You can hear echoes of that in Iggy's own work. He's celebrated for the primal scream, but Iggy is also a deeply thoughtful lyricist. Songs like Search and Destroy or I Wanna Be Your Dog aren't just dumb punk anthems. They are powerful, nihilistic poems capturing modern alienation. In Savages, Iggy saw a band that understood that real rebellion wasn't just about noise. It was about having something important to say and saying it in a way that couldn't be ignored. Now we go back, way back, to the primordial soup from which Iggy Pop crawled. At number 4 is a band that wasn't just an influence, they were a revelation. They were the spark that gave a young James Osterberg permission to become Iggy Pop. We are talking, of course, about the Rolling Stones. It's hard to overstate the impact the Stones had on a kid in mid-60s Michigan. While the Beatles were the charming face of the British invasion, the Stones were their sneering, delinquent alter egos. They were gritty, they were dangerous, and their music was steeped in the raw, electric American blues that Iggy already loved. As Iggy said, other bands wanted to hold your hand, but the Stones wanted something else entirely. For Iggy, seeing the early Rolling Stones was a profoundly formative experience. He's talked about his love for their early albums, especially 12x5 Prius. This wasn't the polished stadium rock machine of later years. This was a young, hungry band tearing through Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters covers, but injecting them with their own swaggering, aggressive energy. They took American music, filtered it through a British lens, and sold it back with a new sense of rebellion. But it was more than the music. It was the attitude. It was Mick Jagger. Iggy has named Jagger as one of the key figures who showed him how to be a frontman. In Jagger, Iggy saw a performer who was utterly captivating. He wasn't a handsome crooner. He was androgynous, wiry, and moved with a provocative energy unlike anything else at the time. Iggy saw Jagger on the TMI show and was transfixed. Here was a skinny guy like him, using his body as an instrument of pure power. It gave Iggy the confidence that he didn't need to be a muscle-bound rock god to command a stage. Jagger and Bob Dylan also gave Iggy hope in another way. In his own words, Iggy felt neither of them had a conventionally good singing voice. They didn't have perfect pitch or polished technique. Instead, their voices were instruments of character. Jagger's voice was a sneer, a growl. Dylan's was a nasal narrative tool. Hearing them, a young Iggy thought, if they can do it, I can do it too. It was a moment of liberation. He learned that a voice's power isn't in its technical perfection, but in its ability to convey raw, authentic personality. You can hear the Stones' DNA all over the early Stooges' work. The Stooges took that raw blues foundation, stripped it down even further, cranked the distortion, and pushed the aggression to its absolute limit. In many ways, they were the terrifying, logical conclusion of what the early Stones had started. The Stones provided the blueprint. They showed Iggy you could be rooted in the blues while being the voice of a rebellious new generation. All right, we're halfway through, and we've hit on Japanese experimentalists, London post-punks, and the original bad boys of British rock. The range of Iggy's taste is pretty incredible. What do you think of the list so far? Any bands you expected to see? Let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this look into the mind of a music legend, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Okay, let's get back to it, because the top 3 are where things get really fascinating. At number 3, we have an artist who represents the other side of Iggy Pop's musical soul, the poet. While many of his influences are about raw power, this one is all about. The album is split in 2. Side 1 is electric, with snarling tracks like Subterranean Homesick Blues. Side 2 is acoustic, with beautiful, introspective songs like Mr. Tambourine Man. This duality was incredibly inspiring to Iggy. It showed him music didn't have to be one-dimensional. It could be loud and quiet, aggressive and tender. It was a masterclass in artistic range. As we mentioned with the Stones, Dylan's voice was another major inspiration. It was one more example of a hugely successful singer without a traditionally good voice. Dylan's nasal, conversational delivery prioritized the story, and the intricate wordplay above all else. It taught Iggy that the message was more important than the melody, that what you said mattered more than how beautifully you sang it. This ethos would become a cornerstone of punk, where passion and authenticity always trumped technical skill. But where Dylan really left his mark on Iggy was with his words. Dylan brought a literary intelligence and surrealist imagery to rock and roll that was completely new. He proved a rock song could be as profound as a great poem. This had a huge impact on Iggy, who, beneath the wild stage persona, has always been a deeply intelligent songwriter. Listen to the lyrics of the Stooges, and you can hear Dylan's influence, just filtered through a lens of nihilism and urban decay. Songs like Dirt aren't just simple rock tunes, they're vivid, cinematic portraits. Later in his solo career on albums like The Idiot, co-written with another Dylan fan, David Bowie, Iggy's lyrics became even more narrative-driven. Bob. Dylan showed Iggy Pop that rock and roll could be a vehicle for serious art. He proved you could be both a poet and a rock star, earning him an essential place on this list. At number 2 is a band Iggy didn't just admire from afar. He felt a deep personal connection to their music, having witnessed their rise during one of his own most creative periods. We're talking about the haunting, iconic, and profoundly influential post-punk legends, Joy Division. Iggy's love for Joy Division is well documented. He's played them countless times on his BBC show, speaking about them with a reverence he reserves for very few artists. His connection is tied to a specific time and place, Berlin in the late 1970s. While Iggy was in Berlin with David Bowie, creating his own post-punk masterpieces like The Idiot and Lust for Life, the sound of Joy Division was emerging from bleak, industrial Manchester. Iggy heard their music then and, in his own words, was mighty, mighty impressed. He has described their songs as fine art with moral qualities. This is high praise from an artist who values authenticity above all else. For Iggy, Joy Division wasn't just another rock band. They created something that transcended genre, something deeply personal yet universally resonant. Their music was a stark, unflinching look at the human condition, tackling loss and despair with a grace that was both harrowing and beautiful. So what was it about their sound that grabbed him? Joy Division took the raw energy of punk, the very energy Iggy helped unleash, and turned it inward. They created a sound defined by space, atmosphere, and melancholy. Martin Hannett's groundbreaking production was cold and cavernous. Peter Hook's high bass lines became lead instruments. Stephen Morris's drumming was hypnotic, and at the center of it all was the deep, mournful baritone of Ian Curtis, a voice that conveyed profound vulnerability. The influence of Iggy's own Berlin-era work on bands like Joy Division is undeniable. The dark atmospheric textures of The Idiot are a clear precursor to the post-punk sound. In fact, Ian Curtis was a huge Iggy Pop fan, and it's been reported he was listening to The Idiot shortly before his tragic death. There's a powerful symbiotic relationship here. Iggy helped lay the foundation, and in turn, he saw Joy Division as a brilliant evolution of the ideas he'd started to explore. Iggy's public performances of Joy Division songs with members of New Order are a testament to his deep respect for their legacy. Seeing Iggy Pop, the unpredictable force of nature, take on the iconic vocals of She's Lost Control is a powerful sight. It's a moment where two pillars of alternative music converge. For Iggy, who has always walked the line between chaos and artistry, Joy Division represents a perfect expression of that duality. And now we're at the #1 spot, the band that Iggy Pop has, with zero ambiguity, declared to be his absolute favorite. This is the choice that truly reveals the depth of his musical curiosity. Forget punk, forget rock. The band Iggy Pop loves the most is the Saharan blues rock collective, Tinari Wen. On his BBC Six Music radio show, Iggy's praise was direct and simple. "That's my favorite group." For anyone who only knows Iggy's punk persona, this might seem shocking. Tinari Wen is a group of Tuareg musicians from the Sahara Desert region of northern Mali. Their music, often called desert blues, is a mesmerizing blend of traditional Tuareg melodies with electric guitar-driven Western rock. Their story is just as compelling as their music. They are a band born from political upheaval, their early songs passed around on bootleg cassettes in rebel camps. So what is it about this band from across the world that completely captured the heart of the Godfather of Punk? In his own words, Iggy explains, "That to me is the kind of music that can only develop when there's a lot of space and time, and not a bunch of junk stuff getting in the way. That music just feels naturally right." That single quote is the key to Iggy Pop's entire artistic philosophy. His whole career has been a quest for something real, something authentic, something naturally right. In the often manufactured world of Western music, Tinari Wen is pure and unpolluted. Their music is hypnotic, raw, and deeply soulful. It's built on trance-inducing guitar riffs, call and response vocals, and driving hand claps. There's a profound sense of melancholy and yearning in their music, reflecting the struggles of the Tuareg people. It's a sound that is deeply connected to a specific landscape, the vast, empty, beautiful expanse of the Sahara. This is what Iggy hears. He hears music that hasn't been corrupted by commercialism or trends. He hears a direct, honest expression of a culture. It's the same raw authenticity he tried to capture with the Stooges, whose music reflected the gritty, industrial decay of Detroit. On top of that, there's a direct musical line that connects Tinari Wen to the very roots of the music that inspired Iggy. The blues, the bedrock of rock and roll, has its origins in West Africa. In a way, when Iggy listens to Tinari Wen, he is listening to the ancient source code of the music he has dedicated his life to. It's the blues in one of its purest, most elemental forms. For Iggy Pop, a man who has spent his life fighting the junk stuff, Tinari Wen is the antidote. They are the real deal. So there you have it. 6 bands that the Godfather of Punk, Iggy Pop, has publicly and passionately loved. From the desert blues of Tinari Wen to the post-punk of Joy Division, the poetry of Bob Dylan, the raw power of the Rolling Stones, the modern intensity of Savages, and the experimental chaos of Boris. What does this wild list tell us about the man himself? It tells us that Iggy Pop has never been a one-dimensional artist. He's a true music lover, a sonic explorer with an insatiable curiosity and an unwavering commitment to authenticity. His taste transcends genre, geography, and generation. The common thread isn't a sound, but a spirit. It's a spirit of rebellion, artistic integrity, and fearless self-expression. He's drawn to artists who are, like him, unapologetically unique. He celebrates the outsider, the innovator, and the poet. This list is a reflection of a man who has spent a lifetime searching for that naturally right sound, whether he finds it in a fuzzed-out guitar riff from a Detroit garage or a hypnotic chant from the Sahara. It shows us that the heart of punk rock isn't just 3 chords and a sneer. It's a relentless pursuit of truth in a world that is so often fake. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think of Iggy's picks? Who did you expect to see on this list that didn't make the cut? Maybe The Doors, or his legendary collaborator David Bowie? Drop your thoughts and your own favorite Iggy influences in the comments below. And if there are other artists you'd like us to explore, be sure to let us know. Thanks for watching.